Check. Is everyone ready? Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Mike Boudreaux. I'm the sheriff of Tulare County. I want to give you a briefing in regards to a violent gang that we have dismantled here in Tulare County. Operation Stray Bullet is what we have given the title to this operation. Around 4:30 this morning, the Tulare County Sheriff's Office, in partnership with the DEA, FBI, and the Visalia Police Department, ended a 5-month investigation into a violent gang in the northern part of Tulare County, specifically in the areas of Orosi and Cutler. This violent gang and their members we have been targeting for the last 5 months, are responsible for over 30 drive-by shootings. Some of these being reported and some of them not being reported because the victims are just too fearful in reporting these crimes. The gang consisted of the Norteño Criminal Street Gang and associates who were involved in crimes in the city of Visalia, Orosi, and Cutler areas. Our investigators were able to identify the structure of the gang, which was primarily being ran by our suspect Edward Moran out of Cutler. Moran and his associates were responsible for numerous drug sales, gun sales, shootings, and also conspired with the fellow gang members to commit robberies, home invasions, and conspiracy to commit murder. Our investigation truly intensified when an 8-year-old girl was shot in Seville last September. She was rushed to the hospital, but we're happy to report that today she's recovered and doing very well. Our deputies actually delivered Christmas presents to her a few weeks ago during Christmas time, and she was all smiles. So we're happy to report that she's doing well. Through our investigation, we were able to identify Jorge Barajas as the suspect in the shooting of that little girl, and he's in custody today. This morning, nearly 300 law enforcement officers and personnel from agencies throughout Tulare, Kings, Fresno, and Kern counties, along with federal agents with the DEA and FBI, served over 25 search warrants in the cities of Farmersville, Visalia, Tulare, Cutler, Orosi, and Orange Cove, as well as 28 federal and state arrest warrants. As a result, 25 people, including 2 juveniles, were arrested, some on federal charges and others on state charges, all of whom are part of the Norteño Criminal Street Gang and associates. Among those arrested today, as mentioned before, Jorge Barajas, the main suspect in the shooting of the 8-year-old girl. The violent gang members arrested face charges ranging from drug sales, gun sales, shootings, to conspiracy to commit robberies, home invasions, and conspiracy to commit murder, as mentioned before. During this 5-month investigation, we have seized over 12 pounds of methamphetamine, 150 pounds of processed marijuana, a half a pound of black tar heroin, 18 firearms, 4 assault rifles, a grenade, 2 silencers, and 2 stolen vehicles. At this time, I'd just really like to thank our law enforcement counterparts, specifically to the DEA, FBI, Homeland Security, ATF. We have Chief Jason Salazar here up with us today as our partner from the Visalia Police Department, as well as SWAT teams from as far away as Bakersfield, Porterville, and the Tulare Police Department, the Visalia Police Department, the Kern County Sheriff's Office, Kings County Sheriff's Office, and the Central Valley Task Force. Every police agency in Tulare County participated in this operation today, and we are thankful for our law enforcement partners. I'm also happy to report that no officers or any suspects were injured during the course of this operation. This was a massive operation and truly would have not been possible without the help of those that you see up here with me today and those who are still out there in the field working today. This investigation is not over. We still have officers in the field collecting multiple items of evidence. As you can see, this is a massive detail. We are grateful. You might be wondering why we would arrest a bunch of gang members and such a big deal, and why it would be such a big deal to us, and let me tell you why. These violent gang members, they bring drugs into our communities and into our towns. They're the cause of havoc and terror amongst the law-abiding people who live here. These criminals are poisoning the minds of our children. During today's operation, we arrested a 15 and a 16-year-old juvenile. I would think that they're children. Those kids should have been sitting in school this morning and wondering what they're going to do for the winter formal or some type of school event, but they were actively participating in a gang activity with known gang members. Instead, they're sitting in a jail cell today. Their lives truly have been stolen by street gangs. These gang members are stealing your stuff, robbing our stores, all of these businesses of which our communities work so hard. We have an 8-year-old girl that was shot, and her life could have easily ended. Unfortunately, she is alive today. But these criminal street gangs were happy to report this morning or this afternoon that this particular street gang has been completely dismantled and that the communities of Orosi and Cutler can rest a little easier today because of their law enforcement in Tulare County, their law enforcement in the state, and the federal counterparts who all work together for these types of activities. I want to say that we're not done. We know that there's more street violence out there. We know that more gangs exist. And as you can see, with the collaborative partnerships that are up before me today, this is not something that will end today. We will continue our efforts to make our streets as safe as we possibly can. As sheriff, one of my priorities is to make sure that people feel safe in coming home every night. They feel safe in their parks and their schools. But it takes a partnership with our community as well as our law enforcement to make that happen. And again, because of the hard work, this particular street gang in Orosi and Cutler has been completely dismantled. And I want the citizens of Cutler and Orosi to know that they don't have to live in fear tonight, because those that were shooting up your towns are in jail tonight. So at this point, I would just like to recognize a few people that are up here with me. We have, representing the Visalia Police Department, our good friend, Chief Jason Salazar, who works in partnership with us, and we're thankful for his friendship. Representing the District Attorney's Office, representing Tim Ward, is Dan Underwood, Chief Deputy District Attorney. Representing the DEA, we have Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Benny Ortiz, and Resident Agent in Charge, Chris Coleman. Representing the AUSA's office is Kate Shue. The FBI was also involved in this investigation, and we want to give them thanks and recognize them today as well. At this time, I would just like to thank each of you for coming and listening to our story and sending the messages to the good citizens of Tulare County and through this valley that we will not put up with criminal street gangs. We will use our resources to come after them because we want our citizens safe. So at this time, I would open it up to any questions that you may have. If I cannot answer those questions for you, I have a panel of experts behind me, and we'll try to answer as much as we can.
You know, this gang was Norteños, you said, Sheriff. Did it have a specific name?
What was the...
They were actually from ever. They were considered just Norteños.
Yeah, the last I was briefed, it was a Norteño set with no specific title.
I know you said dismantled, 25 arrested. Are there any other gang members that are part of this gang that you're still looking for, or those 25, is that it?
And part of this leadership within this organization, that's all we're looking for at this time. We went out with the sole purpose of targeting these main subjects of leadership, and we're happy to report that we have them behind bars today.
I know you said that the investigation has been going on for 5 months. Has this particular gang been active prior to those 5 months? Are they well known?
Very active. This particular gang was very active in Orosi and Cutler. We would receive information as to shootings and drive-by shootings. Victims were in fear of even making their names known. Reports would come in anonymously, which makes it very difficult for us to investigate. We would not have specific targets or names during those investigations, but we later learned, after this was coming to a close, we're still investigating drive-by shootings of victims that were afraid to come forward. We're now able to identify those victims and place these gentlemen in court to face justice for those shootings.
Do they have affiliation with other gangs in other countries?
No. This is a local street gang. It's a Norteño set, which is a northern structured street gang. This particular, I refer to it as a set because the Norteño street gang is widespread. This particular group was targeting Rossi and Cutler and parts of Visalia.
Speaking to the guns, do we know if any of them were stolen or where they came from?
Yeah, there's numerous stolen firearms.
Come on up. This is Lieutenant Joe Torres. He was spearheading and leading the investigation. He'll have some details as to the guns.
Yeah, during the 5-month investigation, we have recovered firearms that have been stolen, firearms that have been filed off as far as the serial numbers. We are working with our partners in the federal government to try to ATF to identify the owners of those firearms, but a lot of the firearms have been stolen from different areas in our county and Fresno County.
Do we have any better understanding of why Jorge Barajas targeted the house where the 8-year-old girl was?
Yeah, we believe it was he was targeting another gang, and unfortunately, during that act, an 8-year-old almost lost her life.
Do we know how many of these the guns have been involved or how many shootings these gang members have been involved in?
We're currently working with the Department of Justice. Although these are some of the firearms that were taken, there are currently some that are being analyzed by the Department of Justice, so unfortunately we couldn't bring those firearms, but we are working with them and also the ATF to try to see if we can identify any additional shootings that not only occurred in our county but in other counties.
How many of these gang members are illegal?
Just like the sheriff said, being in such a massive investigation, those details we're still working on trying to figure out exactly where everybody's from. Like the sheriff says, this gang was concentrated in Cutler and Rossi, and that's who they were targeting, but they were also going to Visalia and committing crimes there. So being that we're at the beginning stages and everybody's been arrested, we're still sorting out all that information.
I know you guys said the gang members. What was their criminal history like of the people that were arrested?
There's been several people that have been on parole, a lot of people that have been on probation. There's a lot of people who are already registered gang members in our county that have injunctions against them. And as you can see, they are still actively committing crimes even with all those restrictions.
I know some of these guys might be facing attempted murder charges, but any murder charges?
I think that's a great question, some of which, a lot of this information is coming together. It's fluid and it's flowing. We are learning of information of potential homicides, and additional conspiracy to commit homicide. We have to be very careful as to how much we touch with that because we don't want to jeopardize any investigation. We are very confident and comfortable with the fact that this may lead to more information in regards to planned homicides or even past homicides that have already occurred. But I really don't want to go much further than that. Yeah.
Talking about the 8-year-old that was shot, I believe, in the hand back last September, there was another person that was shot. Any update on their condition or if they were like a gang member?
What's that?
They've made a full recovery.
Yeah.
And do we know if they were associated with any type of gang?
At this point, for the safety of the family, we're not going to release that information, but they were specifically targeted that night.
And we're not trying, we're trying to give you as much information as we can. You have to understand that with gangs comes retaliation. We have to be very careful with the sensitivity of our victims. They were very fearful and coming forward because of the fear of retaliation, and we're trying to protect our victims as best we can. We can tell you that there were rival gangs involved in some of this. Doesn't make any of them any less than a victim when it comes to our 8-year-old child. So that's who we really want to focus on, as the victim of someone in a circumstance, unfortunately, because of gang activity. Her life is impacted for the rest of her life. But those are all very good questions, and I think truly you might know the answer to them. We have to be very careful for fear of retaliation. This case is not done today. Our investigators are actually still in the field. We're learning information as to new cases that possibly will be coming out of this. And when we get that information, we'll make sure that you have that.
Just speaking to that, I mean, when you do such a large operation, are you worried, and what do you do to make sure that there is as little retaliation as possible?
There's been a lot of steps that have gone into place with something like this. As you can imagine, we can't put this type of case together in 1 week's time. We have to get with our law enforcement counterparts to do whatever we can to assure the safety of those who may be impacted directly or indirectly because of the arrests or future investigations. And so we do the best we can to assure the community that we're there for them. It requires them being a part of the investigation, coming to us and letting us know things. We do everything we can to make sure that our community is safe, as well as those victims feel comfortable in coming forward that their law enforcement will be there for them. Gangs have a heavy influence as to that fear factor, and that becomes an incredible challenge for us in law enforcement. But we want our community to